Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so I am Lonnie Zeltzer, not Paul Zeltzer, whatever my little block says. A little technical difficulty, but I want to welcome everybody to our May CHYP webinar. And for those of you who don't know about creative healing for youth in pain, or CHYP, we're an all online nonprofit whose mission is to help teens and young adults in pain and their families. And we think of pain in the broadest sense of the body being out of balance and kids suffering. And what we do at CHYP is we provide state of the science information about pain and associated conditions like anxiety, depression, etc. We have programs for teens, young adults, and for parents. We provide social support and
I think we lost you, Lonnie. I'll pick it up until you pop back on.
I'm
You're
not.
back. Lonnie, did you pop back off? Sorry for our technical difficulties this morning, but Dr. Zeltzer was just saying that we're here in a supporting role to bring together some of the top doctors in the world. And we, because of Dr. Zeltzer's body of work at UCLA and now starting this nonprofit, she has been afforded the opportunity to work with really some of the best doctors in every field. And as a result, I get the benefit of interviewing those doctors like Dr. Ptasnik this morning from UCLA's East West. And thank you all for joining us so that we could bring together some more information and really not be bound by any geographical issues other than some technical issues. Dr. Ptasnik is a double board certified physician at UCLA who is practicing at their East West. She's certified in both internal medicine and pediatrics, and she is working in their traditional Chinese medicine group, which is the East West. And Dr. Ptasnik, is there anything else you'd like me to throw in before we get started?
I'd like to use my computer.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to have this conversation with you, Dana, and really excited for the opportunity to also be, learning from Lonnie and Paul Zeltzer and collaborating with CHYP going forward. Yeah, just a word on UCLA's East West program. I'm in my community fellowship there, so that's really using traditional Chinese medicine as a lens, as a framework, to help guide us in our practice still under a biomedical model. So we're still in a Western medical clinic, but we're using principles, using theory from traditional Chinese medicine to help guide us as we treat people. Traditionally, we've been doing mostly adults, but we're really excited going forward to start expanding, both in collaboration with the Zeltzers and under Dr. Huey, who's the founder of East West Medicine at UCLA. We're really excited to be expanding up our clinic more to start seeing more adolescents, more pediatrics. So that's a really exciting new thing. We're going to be doing that much more in the fall. So going forward, more to come as far as integrative adolescent and pediatric care.
So basically those that joined today are kind of ahead of the curve if they want to get in for appointments starting in the fall.
Yeah, exactly. We're starting to see some kids opening up, and then starting in mid-September, we're going to be really opening up to seeing a lot more patients.
Which is really exciting because really this whole body approach is whole body. It's mind, body, spirit, it's East, it's West. It's really just a collaborative effort to help with our children. So I'm so excited to have this opportunity to speak with you, and we might as well jump right in with what is traditional Chinese medicine.
Before I do that, can you hear me?
Yes.
You're back, Lottie.
Back temporarily. I apologize. So Dana Pacholski is our excellent leader, moderator of the this webinar series, and Dana, you've been doing this for a while now. You're on our board of directors. You sit on so many other boards. I'm not going to list them all. But I would say that we are developing a connection with Dr. Kid Huey and the East-West Center from UCLA. And I'm excited, and Sara is our link between the two. So, and if people will ask questions in the chat box, and Dana will check that out and bring that up for Sara to answer. So take it.
Thank you, Lonnie. Welcome back. Okay, Dr. Ptasnik, I think a great place to start is describing to people what is traditional Chinese medicine, and then we'll weave it into how that works in collaboration with East-West.
Yes, thank you. So it's a big question. Traditional Chinese medicine is a huge field. I like to think of it as a complete medical system. So it's a whole system in and of itself to treat, diagnose. It's really been a practice for thousands of years, developed in ancient China. So I'm not an expert in TCM fully. I've just been learning this for the last few years. So just as a disclaimer, there are people who are much more experts in TCM, but I'm really blessed to have been able to learn the theory, learn the practice, that I can apply some of that to my practice. There's a lot you can explain about traditional Chinese medicine, but just as a foundation, as a framework, I think one of the most important things is that there's really no separation in Chinese medicine between the body, the mind, the spirit, and the environment. And the same energetic patterns, the same energetic principles that move through our bodies, our minds, our spirits, that regulate our energies, are also found in nature all around us. They are the same energy principles in the food we eat, in the seasons, in our emotions. So if we can understand these patterns, understand these energy principles, we can help bring ourselves into balance. We can help find balance with our environments, find balance within our families, find balance through our emotions. So it's really all about bringing ourselves into balance, learning how to do that, finding harmony, and using these energy principles to kind of guide us on how to do that.
Which is an amazing approach, because we know that when we enter a room, we already feel something, right? We just never talk about it in the sense of, oh, I feel someone's energy or my energy's off. Although I do believe now the world is talking about that a lot more since post-pandemic times, but it's really what you're talking about. Why do we walk in a room and feel something? We're picking up on some energy, whether it's our energy we're walking in with or somebody else's. And so often our children are picking up on energy when we're parenting or from being not feeling well.
Exactly. So that kind of brings us into, what is this energy, right? So we think a lot about, kind of one of the biggest words we talk a lot about in Chinese medicine is qi. And qi you can think of as that vital life force energy. It's the energy that animates us. It's the energy that moves through us. It's kind of everything. Everything is qi. And you can feel it when you pick up on somebody else's energy. But I think a really important thing is learning how to feel and understand the state of your own energy. I think that's a really important principle here too, is building up that awareness, that self-awareness of where is your energy at. Is it blocked? Is it stuck in certain places? Is it abundant? Is it flowing freely? So that's kind of, the main principle in Chinese medicine is that this qi should be ideally flowing throughout us smoothly. And if we get out of balance, if we're, eating the wrong kinds of foods, if we're not processing our emotions, if we're not living in harmony with the seasons, if we're getting overloaded with information, the qi can get stuck. And when it gets stuck, that causes imbalance. And when it gets depleted, that causes imbalance. So learning how to recognize where your qi is at and learning how to tap into that, and then find ways to build it up, find ways to move it so that it's not so stuck, is really, how we can use qi to find our way back into health.
I love that statement. Learning how to find qi to find our way back to health. And it is, right? It's learning how our bodies working and having an awareness around it before the stomach aches take over, before the headaches and the anxiety. And we always talk about which comes first, right? The body's dysregulation and then the emotions that go with it, or the emotions and then the body's dysregulation. It'd
Yeah,
be amazing to be able to teach our kids, especially our teenagers, to
yeah,
see some warning signs in their own chi and their own energetic body.
exactly. I love how you say the warning signs, because I think that's an important part too, where these imbalances, though they may be subtle at first, they can be a warning sign that there's, there's more to come. And if we stay out of balance, things that, initially might just be some minor inconveniences, like a little bit of headache here, or a little bit of stomach upset, or a little bit of fatigue, can then start to snowball. And then if that stays imbalanced, if that stays dysregulated, that's where over time it builds into these chronic problems like chronic fatigue, or chronic irritable bowel syndrome, or migraines, or fibromyalgia, or the list goes on. And if you look at these problems, like at our East-West clinic, we often see these people much later in the stage. We see them when they're adults. But when you talk to them, when you get their history, it turns out many of them have had these problems since early childhood. And then you go back and it's, well, what did you do when you were a kid, when you were having stomach aches and having headaches? And, many of them were, not taken that seriously, or kind of dismissed, or they just, didn't know what to do about it. And so then it continues on and it becomes a bigger problem later. So that's kind of our goal, is how can we teach kids from a young age to recognize these things, to help themselves early, for their families to help them early, so that these don't become chronic problems that are even harder to treat later on.
Well, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about how often we take our bodies for granted, right? When it works, we don't think about it. But when suddenly we have a stomach ache, or a chronic stomach ache, or something where the body's saying, I'm not in balance, and it's poking at us, and we turn away and say, I don't want to see you. And then it pokes again. And we say, we still don't want to see you. Eventually it starts to say, well, I might just shut down that system
Yes,
until you want to pay attention to me. And now I have chronic headaches or stomach aches, and then the anxiety comes in, and the depression, and then no one can fix me. And how do we get the road back?
Exactly. So it's really a signal. It's a signal that something's wrong, something's out of balance. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It doesn't have to be something that we turn away from, but instead it can be something that we turn towards. What is the stomach ache trying to tell me? From the Chinese medicine standpoint, maybe it's telling me that I'm worried about something, right? So what am I worrying about? Can I actually address that worry? Can I pay attention to that worry, figure out what can be done about that, and face it head on, and allow myself to process that worry instead of ignoring it, so that it doesn't just manifest as the stomach ache. So a lot of it is not judging these signals, but instead looking towards them for information that our body is trying to tell us something, and then using that to allow us to process whatever that might be.
And with the East-West, we're also looking at the emotions that go with that, right? So what emotionally is happening around you when the body is sending this signal?
Exactly. So that's kind of the cool thing, is that all of these different, there's a lot we could talk about, the different elements, the different organ systems in Chinese medicine. They're all associated with different emotions. So when the emotion is not being processed, when it's being held in, that leads to these signs of physical imbalance, that leads to things we can feel physically, and then that also worsens the emotional layer. So they both, intersect and interlay. So by working on the emotional aspect of it, the emotional layer, working on the stress, the frustration, the anger, all of these things, that'll allow the physical symptoms to improve. Or vice versa, you can use that physical layer of where we're holding in stress, where we're holding in anger, frustration, working on that physical layer in the soft tissue and the acupressure points, that can help the emotions flow more freely too. So you can do both to help both.
It's all working together. So let's talk about, now that people have found you and they're on this webinar, they're going to want to come see you. What does an intake look like?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. In a lot of ways, in some sense, it's not that different. You get a really full history. I've been shadowing a little bit too with Lonnie and Paul Zeltzer, and I've been able to see how thorough they are. And I think that's a really important aspect of this too, is to get a full history. So not just of the child, but also even of their families too, right? What are the parents bringing into this? What's going on environmentally? You know, you get the diet history, the sleep history. All of these things are, you know, giving you information about what might be out of balance. I think the on the physical exam, there are some differences that are notable. You're, you know, not just doing what you might do when you go to your pediatrician, getting that kind of a checkup, but a person trained in traditional Chinese medicine will also look at your tongue. What is the quality of the tongue, the shape, the color, the coating like? They'll feel the pulse, and it's not just, you know, is the pulse present and regular, but what is the quality of the pulse? So I think all of that kind of leads into, you know, you're not just ruling out disease or trying to diagnose specific diseases, but you are seeing what's the quality of this person's energy. Even if they don't have a particular disease, is there an imbalance here? Is there something that can still be addressed? Because ultimately, you know, if you don't feel well, there's something that is out of balance. And I think it can be really frustrating for a lot of people that don't feel well. They go from doctor to doctor to doctor, and you know, nothing's wrong with you, right? Your labs are fine, your exam is reassuring, your imaging is fine. So there's nothing we can diagnose you from, maybe from a or from a Western medical standpoint, but you know you're not well, right? So I think that can be a really helpful part of the traditional Chinese medicine and the East-West approach, is that, you know, if you don't feel well, there is something out of balance. There's something that that you can do to help bring yourself back into balance. Or conversely, maybe you have, you know, 20 diagnoses. You have too many diagnoses, and you're seeing all these different specialists, and that can be confusing and overwhelming too, because it can be really fragmenting. What is going on? Everyone has kind of a different explanation, a different recommendation. So I think the East-West approach can be very unifying in that case too, because all of these seemingly disparate diagnoses from all of these different specialists can be combined under one pattern of imbalance, so it can kind of bring everything together.
I'm really happy you touched upon the traumatic experiences that people have going to a lot of doctors, and on both sides getting a diagnosis or not getting a diagnosis, because it really doesn't matter if you get a diagnosis if there's nothing that they can offer your child. That sometimes is more frustrating, and then they live under a label, and it provides the body with the reason to continue the dysfunction that already existed, because now it's been called a name.
Yeah, and sometimes the name can be helpful, and sometimes it can be harmful. So it's, yeah, it can go both ways. But I think that's kind of the beautiful thing about the East-West approach, is that no matter what, there's always something you can offer. Even if somebody's, you know, very, very sick, and, you know, things aren't going very well from a lot of standpoints, there's always something you can do that can help, even just a little bit. And it's empowering to know that there's things you can do for yourself. So it's not just, you know, the old school patriarchal model of, you know, here's what's wrong with you, take these meds and, you know, you'll get better. It's what can you do? How can we help you? How can we help your body to heal itself? So there's that empowerment aspect that is really important.
And it's really, really something to be noted, and to commend UCLA for noting that even within this traditional Western structure, that they see an opportunity to bring in the East-West under board certified doctors, so that people really feel like they're being seen on both sides. They're not going to miss something because they're going to a healer or going to this. They're getting really a comprehensive package.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't want to dismiss the importance of the Western model and the biomedical model. We need that too. We need both. So we need to know when we need to do certain labs and do certain imaging and get specialists on board, and when medications are helpful to assist if we need that extra support. But even if you're using all of these things, there's always a way that you can also use the East-West approach to help support. So it's really about bringing it together.
But I love, not only bringing it together, but you're really giving a family a roadmap. You don't leave just with no diagnosis or with a diagnosis. You leave with, there's always something we can do to make our body work in a better way.
Exactly. There's always a plan. So yeah, maybe we could talk a little bit about what some of those things are, what some of those strategies
Perfect.
are. So yeah, I think going back into what the goal is to bring the body into balance, right? The body, the mind, the spirit, the environment, all of these things into balance. So I think there's so many different ways to do that, but some of my favorite things to teach people just simply are acupressure, self-massage. So that kind of goes into the idea of the qi, the energy flowing through the body. Sometimes it can get stuck, sometimes it can get blocked. So by finding those areas that are blocked, that are stuck, we can kind of help to coax, to allow the energy to flow more freely through those areas. And a really simple way to do that is through acupressure. What I love about teaching kids how to do this is that it, like I said earlier, it's empowering. It's something that they can do. And it also teaches them to connect in with their body, to explore that, going back to the pain isn't always a bad thing, but it can be a signal, and it can be something that you can even lean into. So finding those areas, exploring, discovering where on your body there are tender points, and then learning how to do that yourself, or have a family member help you so that you can help restore those balances through that, I think is a really helpful approach. If you come into clinic, we might, do acupuncture on those points using really small needles, but a lot of people are afraid of needles, especially kids who have gone through all these traumatic medical experiences. So I think that's an important point to comment on, is that we don't necessarily need to do needles. We don't actually have to do acupuncture. If you're not into the needles, that's okay. But I think if you see how small they are, they're really quite thin. They're like the size of a hair or a whisker. They're really not painful. They shouldn't be painful. So I think knowing that the acupuncture is an option, but it's not a necessity, I think will help bring more kids into this that are hesitant about the needles. But yeah, that's not the only thing. A lot of it too is about, like you were talking about, the emotional layer. So finding, what emotions are we holding on to? What is kind of stuck within us, and how can we, again, not having judgment, but acknowledge those emotions, name them, feel them, process them. I think that goes back a lot to also what Lonnie and everyone does through the creative healing program too, because I think one of the best ways to process emotions is through creative expression. So through poetry or art or music or journaling, whatever it might be, you're taking these big, intense feelings and you're transforming them. And then you're turning them into something beautiful. You're turning them into art. So that's a wonderful way to allow these emotions to have that energetic space that they require, and then allow it to move through you. So I think that's a really important approach to this. One of my favorite things is qigong. This is a mind-body practice. It's really important in traditional Chinese medicine. It's all about, again, recognizing, building that awareness of where your energy is, and then how to do mindful movement, moving with intention to move the energy through you. These movements are very gentle. So people who have pain, who have, if their energy is low, it's a good, it doesn't deplete you more. Some type of activity like kickboxing or, really intense physical activity can be more depleting on the body. So qigong is a really good activity because it helps restore, it helps build up the energy. So these are just a few concepts, but there's a lot we could talk about what are some of the things you can do.
What is the difference between Tai Chi and Qigong?
That's a good question. I get that a lot. I think of Qigong as kind of the broader umbrella. It's a slightly older tradition that comes from more of the Taoist tradition. So the movements are, they're very gentle, they're very fluid, they're flowy. There's a lot more variety in qigong. There's a lot of different branches of it. There's medical qigong, so you can, knowing what imbalance you have in your body, you can have specific movements that help to restore that balance. And then Tai Chi is more these specific forms, specific movements that still use these same principles. They were more developed as a martial arts practice, but they use the same principles of moving with intention, moving the energy. They're a little bit more complex in some ways, so I think they can be a little bit harder to learn. But some people prefer one over the other. If there's a particular Tai Chi form that somebody is drawn to, or a particular Qigong form, I think both are great.
I just love that there's so many things available to families who have children who are afraid to move, right?
Mhm.
That it's subtle and it allows them, even if they're in bed, to work with energy and work with some movement, and then eventually that will help get more movement.
Exactly. When people aren't moving, you think about that as the ultimate cause of stagnation, right? The lack of movement is going to really allow things to stay stuck. So any type of movement, as long as it's gentle, as long as it's done intentionally, will help. And even moving of the mind intentionally, of the awareness of the energy or of the breath, all of this is still helpful. So I think that's a good point, that even if you're stuck in bed and you feel like you can't move at all, because I know this happens to a lot of kids that, they feel so run down, they're in so much pain, they feel like they can't move. And even just starting to build up a little bit of that practice of what you're able to do and then expands from there is super helpful.
But we see so many kids who get dysregulated. However they got there, they get in bed and they're afraid to go. They're afraid to get
Mhm.
up and walk across the room. And we've learned at CHYP that anything we can do to get them up, to do something, even if they're doing something in bed and doing something different, is the movement we need. So it goes right in line with your, keeping things moving and flowing is such an important part for our children when they get dysregulated,
Mhm.
especially if they get in bed. So not for parents to, the takeaway on this one is, even if they're stuck in bed, even if they have fear in bed, we can get in bed and help them make some shifts without them physically moving yet. And we know, we've seen this in our kids, that they get up and they get out of bed and they, believe it or not, for all the parents on here whose kids are in bed, they actually go to college. We don't think we're getting them into 7th grade or 8th grade or 10th grade, but they actually do get up and move on. So I just always like to provide hope, and these are things we see regularly. It takes time. And through moving these subtle energies, getting bigger energies to move.
Exactly. Acknowledging the fear, addressing it, and then allowing small, subtle changes that eventually become big changes.
I just want to stay on the things that you do in the clinic, and we've got the acupuncture, acupressure for those that are afraid of needles. What else would
Yeah.
somebody see when they come to the clinic if you said, okay, here's what we think we need to move some chi? What
Yes,
can you do?
exactly. Other treatments that we can provide, cupping is a really big one that a lot of kids really like. It's um, there's a few different ways. Traditionally, people would use, these glass cups, and they put a flame inside the cup, pull the flame out, and that creates a vacuum. But the way we do it in clinic is we just use suction. So it's a little bit safer for the clinic model that way. But yeah, we use cups, we pull suction, and we put the cups along the back. And the idea is this helps to pull up some of that stuck energy, to mobilize the soft tissue and to move the energy throughout these big regulatory channels throughout the back. So it feels good. A lot of people feel
Oh, we lost you, Dr. Ptasnik. I'll take it from here for a minute until you pop back on. Um, with cupping, I've personally done it. I actually love it. I think you might be seeing it on a lot of the Olympic athletes these days. The last Olympics, everybody walked around with circles on their back where the cups had been, and it really just helps move the energy in those places that are stagnant. And with the traditional Chinese medicine and the East-West approach, places on the body correlate to different organs and systems, and so they're able to use cupping and suction to help get some movement and energy, blood flow. into places that might not have had blood flow at that time. And you're seeing it a lot more in all the professional athletes. There's a question that I want to address now while we're waiting for Dr. Ptasnik to come back on, which is what do you say when you have a team of doctors and some of your very Western doctors are saying, well, where's the proof? Dr. Ptasnik, you're back. I'm just going to finish this thought and let you jump back in there.
Yes.
So I was just saying, I was bringing up there's a question in the chat, which is, what do you do when you have very Western doctors in your medical team and they're saying, well, where's the proof? And so I wanted to answer that while we were waiting for you to come back on, which is, really the proof is watch the kids that have gone through the Creative Healing for Youth in Pain program. They were bedridden, they were suicidal, they were depressed, they wouldn't talk to their own family, they wouldn't go to doctors. And we have a showcase that we put on 2 different times with our kids that sing and dance and write poetry and do all that. And the way back was through creative healing. So we love the East-West balance, but sometimes we just need some good creative healing. And so that's what we do. So welcome back.
Thank you. And just to speak to that too, there is actually a really big growing body of evidence that does look at what is the evidence, and they actually do big trials and things like that with acupuncture, and there is really good data supporting it for chronic pain, for headaches, for functional abdominal pain, for fibromyalgia, all of these types of things that we see frequently, and we don't have necessarily a lot of good treatment approaches that work as well in the Western model. We're seeing a lot more evidence supporting them in the in the literature. So it is also evidence-based. It's not just anecdotal, not just theory. We do have a lot of growing evidence for the support of acupuncture. But asking people to, they feel it. You can actually feel it from even just an individual level. So I think getting the experience yourself and knowing that you feel the changes is some of the best evidence for people too.
And I think to remind parents that we just have to keep trying and find something that helps our kids find their way back. And that,
exactly.
Again, I can't say it enough. It is a collaborative, it needs a team and it needs different things. And if there isn't a medicine for whatever your child is experiencing, then this is another way to look at it. It's a holistic medicine, basically, by getting the body to move and the systems to work
Exactly.
collaboratively in our own bodies.
Yeah, exactly. And what's the right foods for us? What is the right activity for us? All of those things play a role. And, I think a lot of times from the Western standpoint, people can get, more of a unified approach. So, here's the diet that's healthy. This is a healthy diet. Everyone should be doing this amount of exercise. But we could see from the East-West model that the same diet, the same exercise isn't the right fit for every person, right? It's going to be depending on that person's particular pattern and where they are, it might be a very different diet that's going to be helpful for that person, and the right kinds of exercise, not just the same exercise for all. So I think that's an important concept too.
And this is a really good time to talk about the brain and the brain's, as a control center for our body. And we see kids that say, I don't want to hear about mindfulness, and don't tell me I can't eat whatever I want. I don't feel good. I want to eat whatever I want. I'm done. I'm just going to do whatever makes me think I'm happy. Right. Which brings us back to the brain once again. And what we see with the effects of pain in the brain is the brain starts to limit, and we start to work within what Dr. Zeltzer calls a sticky neural loop, because it just gets stuck in what they think is the place to live in. And so then the brain is. So I'd love to talk about the brain's importance and how do we help our kids see that how they think, the thoughts they think, the words they use have an effect on their body, both from being stuck in illness and dysfunction to actually the road out back to health.
Yeah. I mean, and one thing I tell people is, like, I don't want to make you do anything. I want you to discover what works for you. I want you to feel good. I want you to feel the best you can feel. So if there's something that you absolutely hate doing, this isn't going to help you. If you're trying to do these breathing exercises that feel like torture, that's not going to be helpful for you. So it's more about finding what works for each person, but also paying attention to how they feel when they do it. So if there's a certain food that you keep eating, just pay attention. What do you feel like after you eat it? Do you feel worse? Do you feel, more bloating? Do you feel headaches? Do you feel kind of low energy after you eat that food? Then just note that, pay attention to it. I'm not telling you to even change it right away, just pay attention. And if you start, the more you pay attention to how you are actually feeling, the more you'll naturally start to move towards foods that make you feel better and away from the foods that make you feel worse, because you don't want to feel that way. But we just get stuck in these patterns, right? We get a rush from certain foods. Maybe there's certain things that at the moment might feel like they're helpful, but if you actually take a step back and pay attention to how you're reacting to it, you'll learn, and you'll learn what is actually working better for you and what's not. If you do certain, it's not necessarily the same type of mindful practice, but if there's certain activities that help you feel in the zone, that's mindfulness. So maybe it's playing guitar, or maybe it's biking, or maybe it's just taking a walk outside. But these are all mindfulness practices if you're allowing yourself to be present and to be in that moment. That's all mindfulness. That's all mind-body practice. So I think it's more about using that self-discovery, using that empowerment for people to figure out what actually works for them, and then it doesn't become a conflict.
And I love the awareness is really everything, because once you put awareness to it and you start to see it, then the brain can say, oh, this makes me feel good, or this makes me feel bad. And then the awareness says, well, do I want to go this way? And the kids actually have more choice and more say in the matter of their own health than they think they do.
Exactly. They can create what is going to work better for them through that awareness and through that practice of just being present.
But we still have the big issue, really, which is there a pill for that? And I hate the quick and easy fix. And I think that a lot of parents are struggling with that. A lot of people struggle with that because everybody wants the quick way through.
True.
And
we would love things to be easy. Yeah. I think there are time and place for certain medication. I'm not against the medication, but I don't think it's ever that easy. So even if you have an indication for, like, a simple example is a bacterial infection, right? Like there's certain times when it's like, okay, you definitely have an infection that we need to treat with an antibiotic. But even in that case, just giving the antibiotic alone isn't enough to actually clear the infection, because your body has to use that antibiotic to get rid of the infection. So you still need to support the body so that it can help to clear the infection with the use of that antibiotic. You still need to give fluids, you still need to rest, you still need to not overdo it. And you can, use movement, you can use acupressure, you can use teas, you can use the right foods to help bring you back in balance in addition to the antibiotic. But then it's like, what is the state of imbalance that led you to get that infection, right? Were you, staying up all night studying for school? Was your immune system weak because you're really stressed? Were you, eating crappy food, and were you overwhelmed, and your immune system was low, and that was what made it easier for the infection to come in? So it's not just about, here's the infection, here's the antibiotic. It's about, where are you at when you got the infection, and how can we bring you back into balance so that you don't get the infection next time? So I think that's, people think it's so simple. Oh, just take the right antibiotic. But I think that's a good kind of metaphor for any time you need a medication. Yes, the medication is helpful, but what else can you do so that eventually you don't need the medication?
And how do we convince our children that maybe there isn't a pill for it? Or, how do we not just always focus on a pill when sometimes a pill there isn't a medicine that is prescribable?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a hard question. I think it just comes down to acknowledging that, I wish sometimes I just say that, like, I wish it was that easy where I could just give you a pill to fix this. If I could, I would, like I would give you a pill to fix it if I had that pill. But, unfortunately, this is going to be a slower process. This is going to take some more patience. But, ultimately, the pill is passive. That's something external that doesn't actually deal with the internal issue, so it's still it doesn't take into account you necessarily. So I think it's actually ultimately more empowering. It's better if you can figure out what you can do to heal. What can you do for yourself to heal rather than taking something externally? It's ultimately more empowering.
It is, but unfortunately, this generation is so focused on, I have a headache, I take an Advil, not why did I get the headache? What's the dysfunction? I mean, we're getting there, but it's going to take some time. And I think what's really important for parents to remember, and mostly for our children to remember, is this isn't a light switch. We just go walk in and flip it back on, and the body says, oh, I'm back. It's a dimmer. And
Mhm.
one little thing, we all go to the doctor or go to a different modality and think that we're going to just, okay, I went and I did acupuncture and now the lights go back on and my body works perfectly again. No, it's a dimmer switch. So you may not feel the dramatic effect, but it's on the road.
Exactly. And it's a
Yeah.
lifelong journey. It's not just now you're healed. It takes consistent awareness, consistent practice, because there's always going to be things that are out of your control that are throwing you out of balance, right? There's things that you can't help. There's maybe your parents are fighting, maybe they have traumas from their intergenerations that you don't even know about. There's wars going on, there's climate change, there's pandemics, there's so much that we can't control. So you're always going to be thrown in and out of balance. And this never stops. It's a lifelong journey. So the more you can learn to acknowledge those imbalances, the more you can be aware of them, and the more tools you have to help find balance, the more power you have. So it's not simple. It's a lifelong thing. You're always in and out of balance, but ultimately the more you know, the more you have power over your own destiny here. So it does take a while though to really learn all of these tools effectively. So I think it's exciting though. I think it's exciting for people to start that journey, and to know that they can only get better at it. It's actually, the more they practice, the more they try to learn these things, the more they try to learn and understand their bodies and their emotions and their feelings and their foods, it'll only improve.
When finding out what all the triggers are in your life, right? As an adult, as a child, that's the real thing.
Yeah.
What is bothering me when I walk in a room and I'm already feeling uncomfortable? Why? Is it
Mhm.
triggering a childhood trauma that I haven't even paid attention to? Or why am I even feeling something before I've entered into an exchange? I mean, these are really powerful tools that people start to learn when you get the awareness around them. But it makes me think that it's a really important thing to talk about for parents that are on here today, which is that we only think in this lane, right? Okay, our child feels this way, so we do X, Y, and Z. But really, there's anything you do differently is helpful to get the brain to process and not just get stuck in a sticky neural loop and thinking, I instead of going to school driving the same way every day, change it up, stop and get a drink on the way. Anything you can do to keep that brain working in a new way.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You're kind of touching on the concept of neuroplasticity, of how do you challenge yourself to get out of some of the patterns, so that you can continue to rewire the brain, continue to learn new things, so that you don't get as stuck. So I love that. I think that especially in young people, there's so much growth that you can do. There's so much you can do to challenge yourself. And I think having the tools of stability on one hand is really important. Having the things you do that do give you that groundedness, do give you that stability, do give you that repetition is one aspect that's really important. And then allowing yourself to push a little bit about what makes you slightly uncomfortable, going to the edge, exploring, changing patterns, that's also important. So it's kind of that yin yang balance to what keeps you stable, what keeps you grounded, and then what pushes you a little bit to grow, to change, to allow yourself to continue to explore reality in slightly new ways. So I think both of those are important.
And I think it's really important for parents to remember we do things habitually based on our own childhoods and based on our own fears that we're not even processing, but we just know we do what is comfortable to us. And then our kids kind of join in our patterning. And then when we see them, if their body's starting to show some dysregulation, whatever it is, a stomach ache, some anxiety or whatever, knowing as parents that we can start to see that in our children. Why did they start to change their patterning? How do we bring our awareness into our children needing something different, and then how we can shift it? It all goes hand in hand.
Yes, yes. So I think how you as a parent respond to your child is so, so important, especially as they're developing. And it allows them to develop in the way that gives them the most tools so that they can heal, they can process, and they don't necessarily have to carry your childhood wounds and traumas going forward. But some of that will, and that's also okay. I think having that self-compassion too is really important, that yes, you are going to be bringing into your own children everything from your own life. And if you can see, for example, like let's say your kid is angry and they're starting to show signs of anger. I think how you respond as a parent is really indicative of how your parents responded to you as a kid when you were showing anger. So if you can take a step back in that moment and acknowledge, oh, okay, my kid's showing signs of anger, how do I respond to this? Am I doing this just because it was imprinted on me and I'm just reacting? Or can I take a step back? Can I acknowledge their anger, allow them to feel it, allow them to process it, and be supportive of it? And also in exchange, in that interaction, you can even start to heal some of your own childhood wounds of how you were treated when you were angry. So I think it can go both ways. You can help your child and you can even help yourself, and you can help heal some of these things too, just with the same awareness.
I think one of the greatest things that I learned in my parenting was when I was entering into my child's space, right? When I'm going in their room and they've just been left out of something. And you want to go in and say like, no, you should text this person, or you should do this. You should, before I give any advice, I stop and I take a breath and I close my eyes and I ask myself, is this triggering anything in me that I'm going to parent from my side? Or can I take a breath, ground, walk in, and then say to my child, oh, tell me about it. And I don't have to fix it. I don't have to fix me. Nobody's broken. Just a situation that needs to process, and not process it from just finding the place where we're not processing from my side of it.
Yeah, exactly. And just being centered, being calm, being regulated, and just having that self-compassion, having that compassion, and just being able to be present and not fix it. Because I think that's a really beautiful point, that nobody's broken here. Nobody needs to fix anything. We just need to accept who we are, accept who our children are, accept the state of things, and that'll allow things to improve, even just out of that compassion.
Yeah, when our bodies are dysregulated, it doesn't mean we're broken. It means that our bodies are actually working exactly the way they were designed to tell us that there's something that needs attention.
I love that. Yeah, definitely.
Well, we're at 10:50. We have 5 more minutes before I ask Dr. Huey if he'd like to speak and say anything about our collaboration, but I'm just thinking of anything that's really important for us to cover, and maybe about the center, or about what you're seeing currently post-pandemic. I think could be a good one.
Oh yeah. I mean, we know that in the last few years we've seen a huge rise in mental health issues in young people and all people, but it's been most notable, I think, in adolescents and in pediatrics. I think a lot of that goes back to that connection with everything, with the pandemic, with the school closures, with social isolation, with the uncertainty, and having to deal with all of these imbalances. The huge explosion in social media, and seeing all of these different people and comparing them to yourself. I think that's the biggest thing I've seen is just a huge rise in anxiety, depression, eating disorders, all of these kinds of things. And with that, all of the pains, none of these things, like we said, are just emotional. So there's all of the physical repercussions of that too. So we're seeing a lot of headaches, a lot of tension, a lot of physical tension that I think doesn't get addressed as much as it should in the Western model, but all of the tight necks, the tight backs, the tight hips, the abdominal pain, the stomach aches, the list goes on. So I think that this is a time now more than ever that we need to teach people, we need to help teach families, help teach kids strategies that they could do to help heal themselves, help find balance in the state of all of this global imbalance and uncertainty. What can they do? And I think also it's a big call that we need to teach some of these strategies to other healthcare professionals, that this isn't, this shouldn't be just a unique thing of specialists treating these issues. These are more universal problems. So we need to expand our ability to teach, more frontline healthcare workers, more pediatricians and NPs and PAs and medical students and things like that, there are things we can do, that these are important things to address early on. And then hopefully we can, help address this at a bigger level.
We always go back to teamwork. It's teamwork. It's teamwork between our brain and our body, our emotions and our physicality, doctors, east, west, parents, professionals. It just always comes back to teamwork. And I can't thank you enough, Dr. Ptasnik. This has been a great opportunity to put information out there and give hope to people, to say that there's always something else we can do. And neuroplasticity is a really important concept, I think, to remind everybody that the brain listens and it helps shift, and it's able to be a great team partner. And with that, I would love to ask Dr. Huey if he would like to come on and say some more things about this wonderful collaboration. And before I do, I just want to say, anybody would love to give us any feedback on our webinar series or topics you'd like to hear more, please email admin@mychip.org. And feel free to reach out to any of us. And Dr. Huey, it's all yours.
Hi, good morning. Actually, it's good morning in Hong Kong. It's almost 2 o'clock in the morning, and I stay up want to really bless our collaboration. I'm just so proud of Dr. Ptasnik, and she's just a gem with dual training and really represent our center well in articulating, how best to use our East-West model to help, the next person, the next family. And that, and I mean, obviously, Dr. Lonnie Seltzer, a friend of mine for so many years. And I'm just so glad that in the, in our waning years of academic life, we are able to kind of work together and really not just to think about research, but really try to share what we have learned, and also to try to use the digital format to allow more people to be helped to. And I kind of see that it's not just trying to build the clinic, but also to try to, because the clinic is one-on-one, it obviously is very important, but I think to use the educational approach to allow more people to benefit from what they all can learn to help themselves, and that and this is really related to a summer course that I have taken out of the medical school to allow anyone who can take this course to learn about some of these way of thinking, and also some of the tools that people can learn how to stay well, and also be able to lead a life with balance. And so I think this is just the beginning, and I think that I start out with geriatrics, like our center started almost 30 years ago, but now I see the importance of having this model to be brought as early as possible, from a prevention perspective, we need to bring it to our kids as early as possible so that they learn tools to help handle their stress as they grow up, let alone all the additional stresses that we are going through the last several, years. And I just thrilled that that we have Sara to be the bridge between the two of us, between our two organizations, and also not just to build this within UC, but also to bring it to the community where Sara has been, working with the youth center and also the behavioral health unit of a health system in the East Side as well. But then we want to go from one community to another. I think we would take this global. So I just want to just welcome anyone who would like to sort of work with us, because I think that Dana, you're such a good interviewer. You highlight so many of the points, and I'm just so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thank you for all of your work and your desire to collaborate with CHYP, with Creative Healing for Youth in Pain, and for Dr. Ptasnik, both of your time and all that you've done to help with families and kids and getting back out into the world and living in a healthy, productive way. So, whatever we can do together, it's a great team, and we're so grateful to be on it with you both.
Thank you so
Great.
much. And then,
A couple minutes left if you want to add anything, Dr. Ptasnik. We have a couple minutes.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Dr. Huey. I just wanted to mention, I know he brought up the summer course. If anyone is interested in that, Anna Fong just put in a link for that in the chat box, just if anybody wants to learn more about that summer course.
Well, there's so much to learn. And the one thing I think if we give everybody a takeaway is there's always something else we can do. Don't give up. Just know that our kids, again, we've seen them bedridden, despondent. There's no medicine that can treat them. Their pain is too severe for them to move. And they even get out of bed and dance, write, sing. And I think what you said, Dr. Ptasnik, is a perfect closing, which is using pain, but looking at it through a creative healing, right? There's always something, if we can figure out what it is, there's always something our kids can do. So I think on that note, I leave everybody with hope and knowing that it's never the end. There's always more, and it can be subtle, and it can really move the dial. So thank you everybody for joining. I put in the chat, email any questions or needs or any thoughts to admin@mychyp.org. We are here again as a team member for everybody. And I thank everybody for finding us, for joining us, for your time. And we look forward to the next one. Thank you again, Dr. Ptasnik. I think we could do at least 5 of these and never cover the same information. So I hope we have an opportunity to do this again.
Absolutely. Me too. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Huey. Thank you, Dr. Zeltzer, and everybody for joining.